We are reading Robert Monroe's Far Journeys. We are on chapter 13, page 173 of the book, and page, what page of the Shimangla?
Page 92 of the PDF. Chapter 13. Shock treatment. It took me several months to adjust to the loose road. Adjust is a very broad word to describe a complete cycle of shock, rejection, anger, depression, resignation, acceptance. My sequence paralleled remarkably the pattern others have discovered and studies as to human response when notified of approaching death from illness or injury.
So, uh, uh, this thing, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross had actually discovered that there are 7 stages in which a person goes through when they are told of a terminal illness or that they are going to die. Okay, so these are the things. The first thing is the shock, then the rejection, anger, depression, resignation, and then acceptance. Right. So the same thing that is experienced by a person who's going to die, he also experienced the same thing, because this Loesch thing was so stark that it really hit him that what the hell are we really doing here.
Something was dying in me. I had long realized that the God of my childhood did not exist, at least not in the form and substance envisioned by my inculturation. However, I had deeply accepted the concept of creator and created. I had but to look around me at the elaborate and intricate order of design, of the symbiosis that made the whole process operate. The trees that grew plumb line straight up if given the chance. That provided me and other oxygen breathers with what we needed while we fed to them, unknowingly for a long period, our waste products, which they needed to exist. The balance of the entire planet, whose outer filtering bands of energy permitted just the proper quantity and quality of sunlight so critical to biologic growth, and of course the food chain.
So these concepts that he is actually encountering when he is going out of body is naturally the belief system that was being followed is definitely being put to the test, right? Because there's one god, there's this, that, all that stuff is going to take a walk.
The Lush wrote explained everything very neatly. Most important, it explained the purpose, the reason for it all, the why of it. This factor had long eluded me. The Lush answer was simple and obvious. The reason was there, in very prosaic fashion. We were indeed producing something of value. Lush. If one finally was able to get past the emotional barriers involved, it became hard even then to find holes in the general concept, an explanation of total human behavior and history.
So what we read in the last chapter was a structured explanation of the evolution of the earth, very precise and concise, but it actually told us the entire evolution, how earth had actually evolved.
That left the inspects. Were they the gardeners, the loosh collectors, or the overseers? The question tantalized and tortured me for many weeks before I finally decided I must find out one way or another. On a particular night, after great difficulty in getting 2 cycles of sleep, I awoke with a start and lay quietly in bed, Evidently, my fear of that I might find was greater than I thought. As I unhooked with difficulty from the physical, then slipped out of the second body as it hovered, I scanned for the inspect homing signal, but there was none. Disconcerted me. This disconcerted me at first, but I was determined and foolhardy. I used the ident inspect, the total rote I had on them, stretched out, focused, and let go. There was a quick, short sense of spinning movement, no impression of passing through the rings, then deep blackness, and I was motionless, nothing more. The percept was forming that the ident I had used wasn't enough. I might be at the gate to inspect territory, but I didn't have the passport to enter. I had never tried to go to them. They had always met me. I had no percept of their reality state. Therefore, I had arrived only at the site of our meetings. If I focused on a warm vibration washed through me. Very good, Mr. Monroe. You are quite correct. I
So,
began.
so what happens? Now, generally speaking, we can only go to the level or to the limit that we are capable of going at that point in time. Okay, now again, time and space is a out of the this thing concept, but just to explain it. Now, naturally, Robert Monroe, is not capable of going to where the inspects come from. So when he homed on to that ident, he reached the place where they used to normally meet. He couldn't go beyond that, but because he was coming, again, if a butterfly flutters its wings in Brazil, it affects the entire universe. That saying goes, right? So nothing is hidden in these expanded states. So since he was coming, the inspects knew that he is coming. So they actually met him there.
I began to relax somewhat. At least I had gotten this far, and at least they didn't call me Ram. Perhaps you would like it better if we use the ident by which we know you best. We believe you are ready for it now. Ready for it? A name. They know me best. What could that be? Ashanine. It was Ashanine. It was both familiar and strange. Again, that feeling of trying to recover from severe amnesia and the gentle patience of those trying to help me remember. But the louche. We are aware of the disturbance you have undergone. It was necessary that you experience this. It goes with the territory, as you put it. Then the louche rote was real. I began to flicker. It is the translation that is not real. The difficulty of placing earth and human values properly into perspectives and energies that are not of time and space is a factor very familiar to you. I turned inward, picking up the louche rote. Louche, an energy generated by all organic life in varying degrees of purity, the clearest and most potent coming from humans, engendered by human activity which triggers emotion, the highest of such emotions being love. Is love louche?
So he is very clearly saying that to put things in perspective in the time and space concept is not such an easy thing. And then over here, very clearly is extremely clearly he has said that love produces the greatest amount of louche. So,
Continue.
so love can be termed as the highest emotion. At the end of the day, we can boil down all emotions to two things: fear and love. Love being the uplifting side, love puts you on the right side of the grid. Fear puts you on the left side of the grid. But both produce louche.
Continue, Ashanine. But according to the root, louche is thrown off when life ends its physical existence When pain occurs, anger, hate, these can't be the same as love. How would you define love in your terms? I knew that would be next in the order of things, and I couldn't come up with an answer. Throughout history, great minds and greater philosophers had given it a try with only partial success, and I was none of these. I wouldn't even consider trying. But you know it exists. Love is not an illusion. I released the loose rope and turned deeply inward, scanning. It was easier from this perspective, or perhaps it was the presence of the inspec energy. It presented itself much as a simultaneous mixture and sequence of musical chords and short melodies, only it wasn't sound. It was patterns in colors of light. Scattered among the clutter of harmony, dissonance, discord, excitement, fun, fear, and emotion, and beginning shortly after birth, I had the percept of occasional surges of white, first from my mother and father, then smaller flashes I was unable to identify as to source. I kept scanning through my early years for any slight glimmer of white originating in me that put forth. To my dismay, all I could find was one small white glow for an Airedale dog named Pete. I was certain that the girl in high school, what was her name? Not even a flicker, either way.
So, what is happening over here? Now he is scanning his life to see whether he produced white loosh at any time, the love loosh, right? When we see aura pictures also, we find that when white comes, it really indicates something really good happening. There is one picture where white comes on top of the head. I call it the hand of God, right? Anything that the person does manifests. A full white aura would be a tremendous aura to have. I have never come across a full white aura to date. But over here, he clearly says that that white which is emitted is the purest of the lush, and we all emit it. It's just that we can actually focus it and actually concentrate it and also emit it. So, a father's love or a love for an animal or a pet, all these things will create lush. Now, naturally, if it is the normal, the lusty kind of love that we talk about, that is not going to produce lush. The lush should be produced when there is purity in the love.
Manoj, you want to say something?
Go ahead, Sean.
Most common misconception, early manifested survival drive. I agreed. Yet I could understand why. The bright red and pink chords and urgent melody were impressive even from this viewpoint. No wonder an ignorant girl such as I would come up with the wrong percept. I went on through the mess that was I in a fast forward mode, and I could spot sure and solid white surges here and there, of which I had then been unaware. And there, reality depressed and saddened me, because I found no significant emission from me that was remotely similar. It was all coming in, and I took it and didn't respond. I finally cut it off, would go into it no further. I wasn't much of a loose producer. Too many other color chord patterns and melodies. Except for now, I knew some strong emissions in a few points were coming out of me. Did it take that long?
So, again, it boils down to a factor of awareness, right? So we think that we are great personalities, we are doing a lot for everyone, we are really, right out there. But most of the time we are acting selfishly. So if you're looking at red, if you're looking at these colors which are coming out, they're more the physical colors, more the selfish kind of colors. So when we become aware, that is when the shift actually comes. So now he's becoming aware, and then at the end he says, I knew some strong emissions in a few points were coming out of me. So now he's becoming aware of what is happening.
You understand waveforms all come from the same baseline, the colors and the white. The difference is frequency and amplitude.
So each and every color has its own frequency of vibration, right? So they are all emitted in waveforms. We perceive them as colors, but in actual fact, they're just fields, they're just waveforms.
I knew what they were doing and I appreciated it. My focus was being diverted from what I thought was unpleasant back into an abstract yet trunks and roots position. Using the same stuff, interactive experience, one began to learn to express anger, pain, fear, and all the rest. And finally, hopefully, if you pass the course, a special energy waveform labeled love. Yet, we don't really know what it is, and with my suspicion growing, how to really use it.
So getting into love, right, is a very tremendous thing to do. We saw it in the David Hawkins levels of consciousness also, where very clearly he says that love and above, right? Most of the people are operating at the level of 200. And sometimes people, the enlightened people, they are operating at 700. So the idea is to move up in our levels of consciousness. So unless we move up, we are not going to tap into that real powerful energy source. Are you all aware of the levels of consciousness? I'll take it out at the end.
A carefully
Yes.
designed school of compressed learning. To learn to be high quality loose love producers, the fact that human physical consciousness was for more the most part totally unaware of being involved in the process may be an important ingredient itself. Precious few are cognizant of the non physical agenda, at least overtly. It was getting pretty heavy for my cognizance. Yet I began to get a very faint percept, elusive, but it was there. What would happen if the Guernsey cow did discover that her milk had value? What could she herself do with it if she didn't have a calf to feed it to? Could she save it? Could she spend it on more hay, on protein vitamin blocks to lick? What if she then discovered man was taking the milk she produced? Rebel? Refuse to deliver any more milk? Then she would no longer have a pasture in which to graze, protection from wild dogs, a bull when she needed it, and most of all, no barn to go to where she could get relief from the pain. Without a sense of serial time, she forgets that the pain eases eventually. Perhaps even knowing she wouldn't care. She wouldn't want to mess up a good thing. Therefore, who cares? Who would care?
So So the point that he is trying to make over here is that if you become aware of your value, then I would say that over here he may be indicating towards ego. And as soon as you become egoistic about what you're doing, you lose the value of what you are doing. So if because we are unaware of this stuff that we are producing, we are able to produce it just like the cow example that he's given over here.
To use your term, you can't beat the machine. The percept was still there, faint, still to be explained or satisfied. What about those who do beat the machine? There always have to be exceptions. No machine is perfect. Only one anomaly is needed to prove a static or create one. Statistic or create one. Are they carted off to be ground up into hamburger meat? If so, is hamburger a sort of superlouche or something entirely different? Is this also a part of the machine product? Or is it rust that is scraped away and discarded.
So over here in the last paragraph, he also talks about certain people are becoming aware of it, right? So the awareness is expanding. Now over here he's just asking the question. He's not explaining or saying anything. That today when a cow is taken to be made into a hamburger, is that the waste product or is it something bigger that is happening?
And the bull calves, what is their role? Never will be lush producers. It takes only one bull for every 50 cows. So there's a surplus. In nature, the machine, left alone, there's a way that is automatically taken care of. The impersonality of the prospect of dominance and predation is certainly not in the winning column. Hold it there. The percept is getting stronger. There would be no luge production without at least uh, one bull. So he is an indirect luge producer, vital to the method. That would infer. So are grass, hay, water, minerals, and the rest.
So nothing happens in isolation. Everything is related to everything else. So even in the Gita classes, Nagarji is constantly saying that if we think that we are doing everything, we are crazy, because there are so many things that need to happen for anything to happen. Like today, if we are all sitting together over here, Robert Monroe should have existed. He would need to have been born. Then he would have had to write the book after having all these experiences. All of us would have to have internet connections. We would not have to have computers or an iPad or an iPhone or a Android phone. All of us would have to have electricity. All of us would have had to have time. All of us would have had to be born. So there are so many things that need to happen for all of us to be together over here, right? So everything is related to everything else.
Remember your waveforms, beat frequencies you like so much. Let's see here. If a smart transmitter propagates certain waves, they can resonate with other related vibrations of like kind to form a multiple pattern which, if thought of as light, would be white. So, in and of itself, you don't have to be the end product antenna or transducer, just one of the oscillators. You may never display actual loose radiation, but you have a vital part in its production. Remembering the scan of my early years, I felt much better.
So naturally, since everyone is involved, even though you're not really producing it, but you're part of the entire system. So that makes you important. In the last chapter, it literally felt as if we were not important, right? We were being harvested. Let's put it that way. It took me to the scene in Matrix where when they come out and they see all the babies are in pods and the machines are using the electricity generated from the babies to power themselves, right? They had fields of people in the pods, and then a person dies, they get rejected and they become waste matter. That's what I felt like, in the last chapter. But here now they are putting it into perspective.
Then why are you disturbed? The percept still itched inside me. They were right. What would I do with loose love if I had a large warehouse full of it? Hand it out? It would only come back with interest, and I would have to build another warehouse to hold the compounding growing volume. The percept surged brightly. It was obvious. Someone, somewhere. If I could.
So now, what is he saying? It's no point of me hoarding the loosh if someone can use it. Now, what is he indicating here? Now he has to find that someone, and he has to find that somewhere.
You are not ready at this point. ready to go to somewhere to meet someone. And in all of this, how do you fit in, my friends? If I had the courage to ask these,
So, right, they clearly told him, you're not ready, right? It's beyond his capacity and his scope of operation at this point in time.
we are not someone as you put it, nor are we from somewhere you indicate. Also, we are not the keepers of the garden of earth, nor the gardeners, nor do we collect and transfer human developed loosh energy elsewhere or when. We do not fit into any portion of the human compressed learning process. However, we have observed its generations and growth from its inception. We do participate when needed without interrupting the learning sequence. Such need is expressed when there is blockage in the flow. Such participation ultimately serves a vital need for us.
So, very clearly, they are saying that we are not the people who made this, but we are providing a guiding hand whenever the flow is restricted, right? So, we are constantly talking about the flow where things start happening automatically. Now, whenever there's resistance, we need help and support to be able to come into the flow again. So, that's where the inspects they come in.
I had a need to ask the question, is somewhere is not the heaven of your history. It was created as were all other systems. Then someone is a creator who was created. You are a creator who was created. Each of you does carry a small root, as you call it, of someone who created you. Through that root of someone, your creator, you carry a percept of the creator who created someone.
So this is beautiful, right? What we are saying again in the Gita also, that we have the Atma, right? And the Atma is a portion of that whole from where it came, right? So over here he's saying the same thing, that someone, you have a portion of that someone in you which makes you who you are, right? So if that someone's portion was not there, then we would not exist. Why? Because someone is our creator. Now, we are also a creator of various things. Today, if people get ideas, right? Someone created the computer screen that I'm looking at. Someone actually printed this book and made the book. We are also creating. We also given birth to our children. We have someone makes cooks and makes a dish, right? Someone creates an artwork. So we are also creating in our own way. So we are creators and we have been created also.
I turned inward. Even with this viewpoint, it was hard to set aside serial logic. The easy percept was how the multitude of distortions, misconceptions, misdirections came about. A little knowledge can be dangerous, and human creative imagination took over from there. If there had not been a someone, humans would not exist. I went over the idea of louche love. It must be quite a place to handle that much louche. This somewhere, it would fall neatly into many concepts of heaven. I grew wistful. Maybe we could go just to the edge of somewhere, so I could get a feel of the place state where there was so much love. Surely near it, but not in it, just to observe from a distance. It would answer so much. That is not too much to ask, Mr. Monroe. We can arrange it. Close tightly. Click.
Right. So now he is going for a trip to somewhere.
Even closed tightly, the radiation was so strong that it was nearly unbearable. I felt as if sweat was pouring off me. I was melting. But it wasn't heat, and I began to heave with great racking sobs and I couldn't understand why. Then the radiation eased, and I opened a little. There was a form between me and the radiation shielding me, and I could perceive a corona effect all around the form from the radiation beyond. It reminded me deeply of religious paintings I had seen, only this was live and in something far different from pigmented color.
So, whenever we are having a spiritual experience, right, many times tears flow, and we really don't know where the tears are coming from or why are we getting into that state of consciousness, that state of being, right? So, whenever we connect with something which is so awe filled that it shifts our state of consciousness. So that's what happened to him when he came over there. And also, we cannot tolerate over love, right? Too much of love also we can't tolerate because we won't be able to handle the power of that.
This is as close as you can tolerate. We are diverting most of the effective energy patterns, which are in themselves only the random residue, the leakage, as you might call it, from the fundamental. Focus through us rather than the outer rim, it will help. With great difficulty, I narrowed and held on the center of the form. Observing self began to emerge again, dominating the overwhelming emotional surge that had enveloped me. It was as if I perceived through a darkly tinted window, and I had to work continually to keep the emotion below the threshold level. The wondrous and brilliant joy or reverence melded into one, yet with flashes of each sparking momentarily, all coursing through me as I responded to the radiation, unable to prevent it and barely keeping it under control. This would most emphatically be the ultimate heaven, the final home.
So again, he's feeling that love emitted and the power which is emitted from wherever he was.
Observe more carefully. You are capable of doing so. I looked through the smoke glass shield that was my inspect friend, and I was grateful, for I knew if I responded to this degree from just the reflection, the leakage, the full force of the radiation would have shattered me. I was not ready for it. If this was the percept from the distant edge, there, in the long view, was a radiant living form of incredible size. My first percept that of a tall standing humanoid, arms outstretched in front, palms upward. But just as quickly, it was not. Instead, a shining globe, edges indistinct, behind it another, identical in appearance. Behind it another, a continuous cascade, moving away into infinity, beyond my perceptibility. From each came numberless beams or rays, some huge in their diameter, others no wider than a pinpoint, all uniform in size throughout their length and beyond my percept as to their destination. Some of them moving past me so close that I felt I could reach out and touch one.
So basically, orbs of light, right? When we go into expanded states, and in many of the exercises also, when you're taken through a doorway or into an altered, into a different level of consciousness, many times we will perceive ourselves as just balls of light, nothing else. So over here, he's seeing these globes of light, these blobs of light, and it is going towards infinity. One is leading to the next, it's leading to the next, it's leading to the next. If you see our religious text also, there is one level of awareness or one reality, and beyond that there's another reality, beyond that there's another reality, beyond that there's another reality, and so on and so forth. It's there in the scriptures also, and Robert Monroe explains this very well in his next book, The Ultimate Journeys, the levels. And over here he's talking about the same thing, one globe after the other.
Would you like to do so? We will help you if needed. I hesitated, then, with the warm assurance from the shielding inspect form, I stretched a part of me out, cautiously, and touched the smallest ray nearest me. In an instant, the shock spread throughout all what I thought I was, and I knew, and in knowing, knew that I would forget if I tried to remember, because what I could not yet handle the reality of it. Yet, I never again would be the same, even without remembering, except that it occurred, and an indescribable joy of knowing only that it could take place and the echoes would reverberate in me throughout eternity, whatever my eternity was, gently. I felt myself being detached from the ray, and I collapsed behind the shielding form of my inspect friend. Friend, inspect, I realized then how provincial my percepts were. I also realized how limited they were. The radiating globes, the rays emitted.
So again over here, you you see, when you go into a spiritual experience or any kind of experience that you have, even if you don't realize it, it is bound to change you. So when you go into a spiritual experience, you will find shifts taking place. This is something that also happens in a much lesser degree than what has been explained over here when we are clicking out. And it has been seen that after a certain point, when people have done the excursion workshop and they keep attending attending the meditations, clickouts actually seem to increase. The reason that, in my view, and I click out all the time also, in my view is that something is happening internally which is not available to you consciously, but it is slowly changing you from inside. That is why I say all the time that hemisync is a process of jhadu marwing, it cleans you without your knowing that you're getting cleaned up.
You responded very well for the initial exposure. Your human louche love energy is transmuted into the center of what you perceive. From there, it is redirected into what you call the rays to the points where it is needed most. When you have progressed, we can guide you to one of the destinations so you can observe the results. My percept was not strong enough to bring any flicker whatsoever as to what exposure to the full force of such rays might be. But my human curiosity wouldn't let the basic question go unanswered now that I had smoothed somewhat. It was created, it was always there. We have no percept of a beginning. Are you ready to return now? I turned inward and closed tightly. Click.
So very clearly, the inspect has said that this was always there. So till the inspect got consciously aware, or when the inspect got consciously aware, the globes were already there. So that means the globes pre-exist even the conscious awareness of the inspects.
We were back in familiar blackness, only now it seemed empty and sterile, but the inspect energy was still beside me. Now I would have to put together a new ident for them if they could hold up so calmly under. Inspect will serve as well as any other, but I couldn't let it alone. As shaken as I was, I knew I had to ask because I had known they were greater, but how much greater now might be a depth. We are created just as you are created. More than that, it is important that you obtain from your own percept, in your own, how do you put it? Time, you will find the reason for this.
So very clearly they have said that it is important to get our own perspective about things, right? When someone tells you something, it means they are telling you, you're not sure about it. But when you get your own opinion, when you get your own understanding, that is when it will become wisdom. And the trick is to have the knowledge and the experience to be able to make it wisdom. Now, today he has had this experience of going and touching the globes, and he has actually felt it. Now, if anyone tells him that no, that doesn't exist, he is not going to accept it because the experience was extremely real to him. and he has got information about what they are also.
Suddenly, I felt a strong, urgent signal pulling at the back of me. I resisted at first, not wanting to leave, but the signal was persistent. With the warm pattern of understanding from my inspect friend, I turned and followed the signal. Instantly, I was hovering over my physical body. There below me was my second body. I slid into it easily, then into my physical. My right arm was tingling due to lack of circulation. I evidently had been lying on it at an angle. I flexed the arm several times, musing as I had so many times before. Suppose there were no signal to return. How long would I stay away? Would I never return? It was then, lying there in the darkness, listening to the whippoorwill and the night crickets outside, the soft earth scented breeze flowing in through the open window, feeling the hot warmth of our little dog Steamboat sleeping contentedly against the soles of my feet, the even breathing of Nancy sleeping beside me, that I felt the wetness of my cheeks and a few remaining tears in my eyes. And I remembered, not much, but I remembered. I sat up in bed, wanting to jump up and shout in incomprehensible joy. Steamboat raised his head and looked at me curiously, then dropped back. My wife shifted position as I sat up, then gradually resumed her even breathing rhythm. I would not wake her. She needed her rest and recharge. I lay back and remembered. Sometime before dawn, I too fell asleep.
Very nice. Anyone anything to say or ask in this? I think it was pretty clear.
Chapter 14, One Easy Lesson. Time 3:40 a.m. Awake, alert, rested, relaxed. Unhooked easily from the physical, slid out of the second immediately and waited for a signal. There was none. So I let go and let the total self take over. There was the usual blur of movement, not too extensive, and I had the ident of BB close by me. My percept of him was totally different. He was tightly closed and dulled. The thin outer haze of the intermediate area made him even less distinguishable.
So over here, there was no percept. So I let go and let the total self take over. Now, this is what we are talking about, allowing the process to manifest for us rather than forcing the process to manifest, right? The more we get into the flow, the better it is for us as a whole.
I tried to smooth casually. Hey, old buddy, what's up? BB opened slightly. Oh, hello, Ram. I had it you would be pulling skips back to KT95. He dulled. Sure. I smoothed very gently. Anything I can do for you? No, no. He started to close. I'm just hanging around. He had the set of someone who had lost his best friend, which was exactly the case from his perspective, and partially so from another, partially in that the same AA, when he finally emerged, would be the fundamental with the unique variegation learned from the inhuman experience permanently interwoven and overlaid throughout the being that he had become. It could be construed as if a loss if BB did not accept the change or expected only the stasis of KT95 that had been AA. I
So
tried another approach.
all experiences change us, whether we like it or not, right? So naturally, when we change, if people around us don't accept us, then it creates problems for them as well as for us.
I tried another approach. Well, you just can't stand here forever. BB blanked. Forever? What's that? I flickered. It's a human expression. He vibrated. I want nothing to do with that human action. I put it to him hard and straight. You're going to have to get some kind of rote about human. If you don't, you won't know your friend AA when he comes out. You won't have any ident on him whatsoever. BB vibrated. Sure, I will. You don't lose things like that. It won't be the same. Pick up your root when you try to pull him out. Even then, you had trouble with his ident. I guarantee you that's just the small part of it. He was only on his way in. He was just getting started. He turned inward and closed. I suddenly got the percept that I had done it again. What would I do with him? He wasn't a stray cat or dog I could take back, feed, and find a home for. It was ludicrous. Fix him up with a human body? How would I do that? And he certainly wasn't going to join the line and go human via the entry station. Can you learn to swim without getting in the water and getting wet? I tried to ease out of it gracefully. Maybe it's best that you pull a skip and go back to KT95. Let it go at that. BB opened slightly. I did, went and came back. I waited. I wasn't going to get in deeper if I could help it. I knew he would go on and he did. There was a hole and the hole was empty. You ever been like that? I replied. Yea, I've been there. It'll stay empty because it's designed for one curl. No other will fit in. AA was one smart curl, you can believe it. It's too smart for his own good. Look what it got him.
So basically, what he's saying over here, it's like, everyone has a pod, and each pod is made for one person, and it is connected to that particular one person.
I plied again. It happens. I was about to turn and disengage as carefully as I could, but I was too late. I had the strong percept that he would come to some solution and it would involve me. I was too right. He had lighted very brightly. You can do it. Do what? Feed me rotes about humans. Then I'd be ready for him. I flickered. I wouldn't know where to start. Then show me how it works. How am I going to do that? You'd have to be inhuman. No, no, I wouldn't. BB cut in quickly. You move around without a physical body. Well, yes, but you and me, we had a hook right from the start. Ram, like old friends, I got a solid ident on you. So you be my tour guide, quick and short. How about it? I smoothed. What's it like being human in one easy lesson? He lighted more. That's it. That's it. That was it. All right. Not quite the blind leading the blind, but close. All I could do was give him a skim over what I did have as the basics. Show him. Yes, show. That ought to make it clear. I opened. All right. The main thing about being inhuman is survival. That's the biggest percept of all. It drowns about everything else for most humans. He
So,
blanked.
so basically the prime directive for us here is to survive. So we will protect ourselves, right? At the end of the day, we will do anything to protect ourselves and survive. So it takes a lot of guts when people put them into danger for themselves, into danger for other people, because they are violating the prime directive.
He blanked. What's survival? Staying alive. What kind of problem is that? You're alive, you stay alive. I smoothed. Not if you're in a physical body. The imprint comes up for most to mean stay alive in a physical body no more. They use most of their energy trying to survive, one way or another. That's the cause of virtually all human problems. The drive for survival is so strong, it messes up everything. End of lesson. BB rolled. Come on, that's the wildest rote I ever had thrown at me. It's not so funny if you're in it. You believe it as real and nothing else. He continued to roll, and I realized there was only one way he just might get the idea. Show him. Take him down on the beach and watch the swimmers. Come on, follow my ident. BB lighted. Sure, Ram. I turned, did a half row, and dove down through the rings with my new KT-95 friend close behind me. Never mind the big centers, get down to the basics. That would be back from civilization, outlying physical areas, middle of Asia. Yes, that would do it. I pulled to a stop just over a bleak hill with a ragged forest down one side. A man was crouched in the edge of the forest. BB was beside me, and I turned his focus on the man. What looked to be a small deer was grazing in the grasses not far from the man. The man raised a gun, took aim, and fired. The deer fell, twitching its legs, and the man ran forward, pulled the deer's head back, and slashed its throat with a knife. Blood gushed out from the deer's throat, and it finally went limp. The man hoisted the deer over his shoulder and moved along the edge of the woods in the direction of a stone hut. We followed as BB pushed at me. That human, he killed that other being. I replied, yep. Why did he do that? Not much survival going on there. Not for the deer. That's the other one. The animal. The other being. The human needs the body of the deer. BB blanked. What would he want with that? He's already got a body. I smoothed. Here it comes. To survive, he needs it to eat. Eat? What's eat? He puts it in his own physical body to give it energy to survive so he can stay alive. That's what we ident eating. The other being, the deer, it didn't survive, stay alive. Physically, I got a good percept of the energy leaving it.
So
One easy lesson.
over here, he has got the percept of the energy leaving the deer. So that conscious awareness which is running the deer, when the deer has been killed, it has left. So like that, we say that even when we die, the energy which is running the body, who's running the body, you could say the Atma, the soul, or whatever, that also leaves the body.
One easy lesson. Well, humans are what we ident as the dominant species being alive here. They are at the top of what we call the food chain. Food is what we call the stuff we eat. Little species get eaten by bigger species, which in turn get eaten by bigger species until you get up to human. He isn't the biggest, but he's the smartest. That's why he's the dominant species. He eats about everything that grows. Vivi was turned inward and flickering as we followed the man to the stone hut. The man shifted the deer carcass off his shoulder and hung it head down on a rack outside the high draped doorway. Then he went inside. Vivi flickered. Isn't he going to eat it? He will later, has to cure it a little first. Let the blood drain out of it. Want to go inside? He didn't really have a choice as I led him through the stone wall. Inside, there was a small fire burning in the center of an earthen floor. Around the fire were three persons, a woman and two small children. The woman was stirring a pot hung over the fire, the two children watching hungrily. The man sat down and joined them, took off his heavy coat, and accepted the bowl the woman handed him. He started to eat, using his fingers to pull pieces of food from the bowl and sipping from its rim. Bibi pushed at me urgently. What was that he was doing? He's taking pieces of food and putting them into his body, and the little stuff he just pours it in. Yea, I got that percept. It was before. He slipped off part of his body. I blanked, then lighted. That was his coat. It's not his body. It's a piece of stuff he puts on to keep warm. That's the next thing in the survival need, to keep your physical body so it's warm enough or cool enough and to protect it from getting hurt. That's the reason for the cabin, the hut we are in now. It helps protect the physical body, the fire, the radiation in the middle that helps them keep warm.
So, description of why we have a house.
Should we stop here?
Yeah, we can stop. Okay. Anyone, anything?